Hope you are all enjoying your lunch. It was delightful. We're about to get started with Randy Cole, and I know that all of us are eagerly anticipating finding out exactly how we get our share of the $45 million fund. But
is that all you want?
That's all I want, Randy. Just my little piece of the pie. Before we do that, the folks at the Fund for Our Economic Future asked me to introduce to you Jill Miller-Ziman, who is running for the Civic Commons, the Efficient Gov Network project, kind of working with the fund and ostensibly with all of you. Jill is not just a great civic engagement director, but she also happens to be one of you in terms of coming from government. She's on Pepper Pike City Council. So, and she also blogs at about like 5 different places, including Writes Like She Talks and In the Arena. And here's Jill. She's going to just tell you a little bit about what's going on at theciviccommons.com/EGN. So if you want to get involved in the conversation there, you can. Jill.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you all for coming. It's really exciting to see a room full of people who are all interested in this topic of collaboration and getting something going. I just want to show you a couple of things quickly. This is information that you can pick up outside at the table. I'm also going to try and make sure that the facilitators have these available at the afternoon sessions. This is information about the Civic Commons, but most importantly, it's got the website address that Dan just told you, theciviccommons.com/EGN for Efficient Gov Network. And if you go there, you will find all kinds of resources related to your topic areas, related to podcasts, multimedia, video, all kinds of resources, news feeds that will give you information specifically about how you can get involved in the network. It allows you to be able to talk to each other, connect with each other, ask questions. It's being monitored, and there's interaction on there from folks at the fund as well as those of us at the Civic Commons. And it's really going to be the go-to place for you after this conference to be able to continue to communicate with each other, in addition to hopefully swapping information with each other while you're here. The other thing that I want to show you is this is a sign-up slip that's out front at the registration table. This is for you to actually sign up and join the network so that the fund has all of your contact information. I think they're looking for your name, organization, phone, and email so that you can keep up to date with what the next steps are. This is not the end. It's not just a conference and then you're on your own. This is what a network is supposed to be. We're going to, you'll be brought back together. There'll be opportunities for that, both virtually and in person, and we just want to be able to be supportive of your coming into and joining the network and taking everything to the next step. So if you have any questions, you can ask me, you can ask some of the folks from the fund out at the registration tables. Remember, theciviccommons.com/EGN and sign up for the network, and thank you very much.
It's weird that Randy's leaving the stage just as I'm about to introduce him. They might be up here. Oh, you need water. Okay, great. So, Randy Cole, as most of you already know, is the controlling board president and policy advisor to the governor of the state of Ohio. Before he held this position, which he was appointed to in January of 2011, he was running audit services and technology for State Auditor Mary Taylor. He is a graduate of Leadership Akron, former board chair at the Ohio and Erie Canalway Coalition, graduate of the University of Akron and Ohio State University, a very friendly guy. And he also wanted me to introduce him by saying that he sees himself as an Efficient Gov alum, as a member of this network, as somebody who has been struggling with this alongside all of you for the past many years. And while he has a lot of information to share about what the state government is doing, I think he's one of the reasons that he came to participate in the whole day today is that, like all of you, he's interested in learning as much as possible. So without any further ado, Randy Cole.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Can we cue the video? It's only 2.5 minutes. 21st century.
Joining us now, the Republican governor of Ohio, John Kasich.
I was in the city of Greene yesterday. Do you know they got the schools and the city in the same building? They're saving millions of dollars.
Governor Kasich just visited our school in our what we call the CAB, which is the City Administration Building. We share services with the city. We are one of the only ones, the only one that I know of in Ohio, where the mayor, superintendent's office, the directors, and all the city employees are housed in one building.
We built an 11,000 square foot addition for them. It's attached but separate, but we share some, frankly, some common space. We can share and do restrooms. We share conference rooms and meeting rooms. We share council chambers, which can be very expensive to duplicate for school board meetings.
We've got board meetings, zoning committees, council meetings. We're not repeating services elsewhere, and here we only have to pay for, obviously, the equipment once, the manpower once. When you tour the facility, we've got the mayor's offices upstairs, along with some of the other city offices. When you come downstairs into the main lobby, you're directed at a central location. You can identify where it is you need to go.
And what these gentlemen have been able to do, before we even thought about it, was to figure out how to work together and keep costs down so they don't have to raise taxes to make your community less competitive. Now, why am I here on this with them? Because we have a budget that eliminates all these obstacles for communities being able to work together.
I think there's a spirit in the state budget to try to promote efficiency. Anything you do to be more efficient in health insurance, if you're a superintendent, permits you to take that money and provide services to kids, which is what we're all about. My calculations would be it's going to be a multi-million-dollar savings for Greene.
Long ago, we decided that we would not have our own police department. We estimate that the savings by virtue of contracting with the sheriff is about $1.8 million each and every year. So we contract with Summit County for delivery of our health care services. And we contract with the county for building services. Those two alone save us over $400,000 a year. The total value of our collaborations, they're $2.85 million.
That's exactly what we are trying to do with shared services in our state. So we can buy better, keep our costs down, be more competitive, and save Ohio.
Thank you, Governor. On behalf of Governor Kasich and the administration, I really want to thank Brad and the Efficient Gov Network for the opportunity to address you here today. I've given dozens of these presentations since March of this year when the governor introduced his budget and we put all of these government reform initiatives into place. But I have a couple problems today that make me a little bit nervous. I'm not usually nervous about public speaking, but one, there is scripture that reads that you can't be a prophet in your hometown, and I live about 2.5 miles from here in West Akron, so I'm a little bit concerned that that's going against me. And I agree with Brad, this is not sexy. There are times my wife tells me I'm sexy, but when I talk about shared services and government reform, it doesn't lead to much. But this is important. I would argue, though, that it doesn't have to be serious. This is serious business, but I don't take myself too seriously. So little bits of self-deprecating humor like that I find endear me to audiences like you. We'll see how that goes. Let's have a little fun, laugh a little, and try to get through a lot of information. Before I go into the remarks I planned on making today, I did attend the plenary session this morning, and just a few things I wanted to expand on. First, John and Brad both said that this is hard, and I agree that it is. And if any of you have ever read any of the writings by David Osborne, anybody, The Cost of Government and some of those other books, I was at a presentation he gave, and he said, collaboration, his definition, is often an unnatural act between two unwilling partners. I think there are other things defined that way, but I think he's right. But what we need to do and what we have the opportunity to do is to change that mindset about collaboration and shared services. I would also argue that this is not partisan, political, with a capital P, but there is an awful lot of small p politics. From a political party perspective, Republicans and Democrats don't win on this issue. The people do, the taxpayers do, and that's why I'm happy to use, while we had a Republican mayor in that video, examples often publicly of Russ Pry, the Summit County executive who's a Democrat, and or Alan Brubaker, who led a countywide paving consortium here in Summit County. We don't care. It's about the taxpayers. So that's one barrier we have to very quickly break down and make sure that this is not used in elections. That said, the real opportunity we have is to focus on common goals and bring some passion to what we're talking about. Again, another reason, I guess the third reason I'm nervous today, this isn't sexy, this is very policy. I'm going to talk about specific legislation, some processes, but passion, creativity, commitment. as we looked at in that video. Why is this important? There is a larger long-term goal. The governor said this is about transforming the state of Ohio. I have 3 children, 15, 3, and a 3-month-old. We've been blessed with a new baby this year. Brad's assessment of the economic impact of $19 to $20 billion of government and education spending in Northeast Ohio. We've got the opportunity to stop the brain drain, encourage economic development through the transformation of service delivery in our schools and in our local governments. That is a transformational process that we are privileged to be a part of. We are in this place at this time to make a once-in-a-generation impact. And I get a little emotional about that because I feel blessed and privileged to be a part of that, and I hope you guys do too, because it's going to take some emotion, some passion, because this stuff can get a little bit boring, and it's hard. And if your heart's not in it, it's awfully hard to keep your head in it and to slog through things. But we have to create a movement. We have to change attitudes. I was heartened in a discussion with a college president who said he believes he should be a buyer or seller of everything he does. He doesn't need to own or hold things on behalf of his institution. His first line of thinking when they need to do something new is, does somebody else do it? Or if I'm going to make an investment in technology, in a system, in a process, in a building, in a parking lot, who else can use it? And can I generate revenue off of that and or create a new economy of scale that drives down my price as I acquire it? If collaboration, if shared service, if leveraging assets becomes the first thing we think about, it changes the way we do almost everything. I'd like to share a couple things that I hope you understand when you leave here. I hope you believe, one, that the Kasich administration is in line with what you are trying to do. And I'll address the 500-pound gorilla. We made cuts. We had to balance a budget. We had to plug an $8 billion hole in a state budget. The governor from the beginning wanted to make sure that there was significant reform that may not offset those initial cuts, but will lead and work with local governments and schools as partners to transform their service delivery so that their response to changes in revenue, whether it's economic or state and local sharing of revenue, is not just to cut, but to do things differently. And I pledge today that, like this conference, is not just a one-time event. It wasn't one budget. It is a process. We have 4 years or 8 years to walk hand in hand with you, and we will continue to try to reduce mandates, make reforms, break down the barriers and obstacles that you tell us you have. We will work with the legislature that I think is listening. They kept our government reform package in place through this budget process. I think they get it, and they know that we all have to do things differently. There are a couple things. You guys had a session on stormwater today. One of the things in the budget is a soil and water conservation program delivery task force. I know it doesn't sound very exciting either. 88 county soil and water conservation districts. There are 23 natural watersheds in this state. They did a Battelle study to say, they should be more in line with the 23 watersheds instead of 88 county boundaries, because water doesn't know political boundaries. It only follows the laws of physics, and it runs downhill. And sometimes fixing the problem at the top of the hill is a much cheaper solution than the neighboring community that has to deal with it at the bottom of the hill. So because politically that task force fell over like a lead balloon, we are working with all of the local government leaders, those soil and water conservation districts, the State Department of Natural Resources, to develop a plan to transition to where they need to go for a better service delivery. So as you're looking at it here, I pledge, again, that we are following processes at the state level to try to do some of the same things. Health and Human Services, we had significant Medicaid reform in this budget. The next step of that process is an 18-month review of the systems, the service delivery, the state partnership with local counties and providers within the Health and Human Services system to find the optimum service delivery mechanisms and investments in new systems, in leveraging technology. We are not going to do something at the state level and then pass it off to the counties. We are developing these changes to these systems in partnership. IT consolidation, you guys talked about that. We're doing it at the state level. The governor told 27 cabinet directors, we're going to have one email system. Might sound silly, but we have 15 of them today. That's what happens when people do their own thing and didn't think about the alternative or how working with other people makes more sense. So we're looking at infrastructure, network connectivity, servers, data centers, which is a great opportunity, again, for us to partner, and I may mention it later, with local governments. It doesn't mean the state needs to rebuild everything it has. We're talking to local governments, to counties, to schools, to the colleges, to find out inventory what people have so that maybe we can use it in that buyer or seller mentality. Instead of us just building it, which the state is pretty good at doing, maybe there are places we can help create revenue for you by purchasing excess capacity where you've already made the investments or where you plan to make investments. Economic development. I think almost everyone here has heard about Jobs Ohio. In the Jobs Ohio transformation process, and to expand opportunities for economic development, we did not expand our bureaucracy. We created a nonprofit corporation, and $15 million of state funding is going to 6 regional partners around the state, regional economic development entities already in place at the local level, your neighbors and friends, your chambers of commerce, to implement that vision. Again, we found partners and put our money where that capacity exists, and we think that's going to yield significantly better results. All right, I want to point out a couple things for the video. Tom Pasquarel mentioned the political opposition to this, and that it can be a problem for local political leaders. I agree with that too. However, that mayor is unopposed this November, and that school superintendent schools just got their levy passed. When the people pay attention and you deliver the results through these strategies, you are rewarded for it politically, through public support. And I'd say there's a parallel to that. How many people have been to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, ridden a bike or walked on the towpath trail anywhere along Northeast Ohio? In the introduction, they mentioned I was a former chair of that. We weren't a council of governments. I didn't really have control of anything. I herded cats, much like I do in my job now. Controlling board president and policy advisor is a nice title, but really all I do is go to things like this, get good ideas, and go back and herd cats and try to change some policy for the better. That towpath trail, when it first started, there were so many misconceptions about what it was. There were people who were concerned about private property rights and that we were federalizing Northeast Ohio, and that the national park designation was going to mean people couldn't use their property for anything. There are 42 communities that line that towpath trail. We receive federal funding. We distribute that federal funding for local initiated projects. We coordinated what was happening. We herded the cats across 42 communities. As we were trying to get that designation, there were signs in a township in Stark County that said, "Stop the trail, stop the towpath." And people got elected on it. Their replacements were elected by submitting applications for grants to make sure that their community had a trail linkage. I swear to you, no lie, that's what happens. The public does get it. As we educate, as we inform, and as we make good decisions, we're rewarded for that. And within one election cycle, people went from opposing the idea to jumping on the bandwagon. And I think this movement, with these pressures, with the results we're seeing in the field, is going to spread just as quickly, and the public is going to get it. And this is the opportunity, the time, and we're trying to facilitate that as much as we can. Okay, one real quick clarifying point, not to beat up on Dave, but the Stark County ESC, it's not just schools. They provide health care benefits to some townships and to libraries. They're already looking at partners that don't look like themselves. And that's one of the reasons, as I talk about the development of regional shared service centers, you'll see that we have examples across the state where schools and local governments are already creating impactful relationships, and the potential within communities for those similar or different taxpayer-funded organizations to work together is much more beneficial than a rush to consolidation or creating very large institutions because of a perception of economies of scale, okay? We don't have to erase everybody's border and become Unigov to get this done. We don't, okay? One man's opinion. I'd say those non-traditional relationships are some of the most important. You know, I'd like you guys to applaud me at the end of this. If we get the opportunity. You applauded when I got up here. But the most positive benefit, the most positive reinforcement I've received in this whole process was from University of Akron President Luis Proenza, who gave me a hug. We met, and the University of Akron has a partnership with Lorain Community College over in Lorain County and has made significant technology infrastructure investments. They wanted to leverage that and allow local governments or local schools between the two schools in Northeast Ohio to use what they had, leverage the investment they had. Teams of lawyers, teams of accountants, the exasperation on his face. When I talk later about these specific legal changes we made in Ohio law, he said, Randy, he got up from the table, he came over, he put his arms on me, he said, Randy, you did it. The changes we had allowed them to create one-page documents. Nothing against lawyers, nothing against accountants, but public decision makers, school leaders, government leaders should be able to do this on their own without having to create a council of governments, without having to hire a team of consultants to do it. We really have worked hard to make this as simple and easy to use as possible so that you come up with the idea, you put it down on paper, and then you have it blessed by the lawyers at the end or approved by your governing bodies. That's it. In fact, that's what the law says. Put it together, have it blessed by your legislative body. It's legal in Ohio. I'll get to that too. All right, getting the word out. I can't speak to everybody. I can't answer every phone call. I don't know how many Ed jurists can do, but we can continue to try to do as much as we can. Efficient Gov Now, the Civic Commons are great vehicles for that. I would also say the Auditor of State has a tremendous role in this, has a shared services idea center. I suggest all of you go to the Auditor of State's office. It's very easy to find that. The administration is going to continue to work on that. The Ohio Department of Development is the point of contact for the Local Government Innovation Program. That's usually where people take notes. That's the $45 million. Civic Commons, and then all of your statewide associations. There is not a government organization in existence, a type of government entity that hasn't coordinated together and developed an association. I know because I meet with all of them. It's more herding of the cats. We are working hard to make sure I personally answer every request I can for any of these statutory changes, program information. We co-develop communication materials. Ask your associations, or when you meet, tell them they need to develop more capacity in this, or you need to know more, and then do it at your conferences, do it through their websites, do it through their emails and newsletters and everything else. We're seeing that take fire too. Okay, now I'm going to get to what I wanted to say. How much time do I have left? How long do you guys want to stay today? It's all right. This will not take that long. The approach the governor asked us to take in the budget was to make sure there was choice and that we weren't creating unnecessary mandates, or that, and I don't want this to sound partisan political, but that we weren't creating an evidence-based model in rooms down in Columbus that we were pushing out to everyone else. So we met with local government leaders, school leaders. We took work that other people did, like the Commission on Local Government Reform, chaired by my friend, Commissioner Dan Troy from Lake County, another Democrat. Just so I know, I'm looking for human shields in case I need them. Because I am the guy who represents the agency that made the cuts. So, but I'm the good cop, right? Maybe. In any event, he said, remember, someone reminded me in a meeting that we are capitalists and not socialists, and that choices, market forces, we should focus on developing processes, breaking down barriers, and not spend too much time usurping your local control or making the state do things that local government used to do, but to partner and enable you to do more or to do things differently. So our vision is that we will help you provide quality services and to become more efficient, and that the response to our changing budget situation and the financial crises is not just to cut, but to find ways to do things differently. So specifically, what are we doing? One, we have developed some tools in this budget to make you more efficient on your own. Have you guys heard about the statewide public notice website? Starting in January, the state of Ohio is creating a public notice website. All of you will be able to get a user ID and a password, and in lieu of publishing that second and third notice in the newspaper, you'll be able to do an abbreviated notice that says, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, 3 or 4 lines in the classified ad, and here's the website to get the rest of the information. We believe that will save governments and schools tens of millions of dollars around the state. We also suggest that you go back and look at your local codes and make sure you're really publishing what you need to publish and find out how you can minimize that expense as much as possible. But that's a place where we're trying to develop the capability for you to be more efficient on your own. Construction reform, prevailing wage changes, healthcare pooling. The state is not developing a healthcare pool for public employees. We are, however, the Department of Administrative Services is evaluating the 43 existing healthcare purchasing consortia, like Larry Morgan's, finding out what the best practices are, finding out what barriers still exist that are preventing them from expanding either geographically or to other taxpayer-funded entities so that we can provide high-quality health care to public employees at the lowest possible prices. So we are working through that program. The results of that will come out early next year. Again, we'll work with statewide associations, the legislature for any required legislative changes, and we hope that it will be very easy for all of you to participate in a coordinated or pooled purchase health care program on behalf of the employees in your organization. There is a provision that if there are places that are not served, that the state could develop regional pools on their own if we find that that's necessary and that there isn't an entity out there in place to provide that coordination function. Okay? So hopefully you all understand that. Again, pay attention to it, ask for more information as we develop it. So fundamentally, we believe we should help you be as efficient as possible on your own. However, there are so many ways that partnering with another government entity can help you provide things better or cheaper, and that's what we heard a lot of today. So in the budget, we created Universal Intergovernmental Shared Services Authority. It's 9.482 of the Ohio Revised Code. I won't read it to you, but it's only 2 paragraphs of meat, then a little boilerplate. But it says very clearly that any government entity in the state, and we took the time to make sure we had a right definition of what a government entity is. So we used 2744.01, I told you I'd cite code, 2744.01 of the Ohio Revised Code. That's the tort area. And it's one place where I can agree or believe that the trial attorneys in the state have done us a favor. They figured out every way they could get into the pockets of a taxpayer-funded entity. So by looking at, yes, that was a minor laugh line. Oh, am I addressing the trial attorneys today? Wrong room. That by looking at that definition, it is all-encompassing. It is every type of government function and leaves some broad things saying not included here, but it provides a public service. It's in there. So first we used that definition to make sure it applied to everybody. And then we made the law real clear. We said any service they're required to provide under the law or that they provide as an operation of government, they can do with another entity. The other entity just has to agree to it. You can't do it and take away something from the other entity. They have to agree. They have to be a willing partner, following David Osborne's definition. They have to be a willing partner in the collaboration, but there's nothing excluded unless the law specifically says you can't do it. And or I know there are some tax levy and some accounting issues that still need to be dealt with, but the Auditor of State is looking into some of those too. If you want to share staff, facilities, equipment, provide a service, or buy something together in Ohio, you can do it just by coming together at a table, figuring out the deal, and then signing the document and having it approved by your governing bodies. End of story. You don't need to create a COG. You don't need to create a joint district. You know, people ask me, well, couldn't we do that before? Yeah, sometimes you could, but often it was a long, convoluted process, or the Ohio Revised Code was written so that townships could create a joint ambulance district with some entities, a joint police district with other entities, a joint fire district with some entities, meaning they could partner with other townships, a village, a city, sometimes they couldn't. So we said, that's crap. Everybody should be able to do everything with everyone else, okay? It's there. Have your lawyers look it up. Universal shared services. So first, you can partner with whoever you want. But second, local governments and schools should be able to partner better with county governments, and we increase the authority for counties to centralize services. Our belief is, if you as an entity want to work with your partners, and we heard some of the obstacles or barriers here today of former annexation battles, personal battles, political battles that are out there. If you don't have willing partners in your neighboring communities or a school district in a local government, turn to the county. They have they have increased authority to do it, and we are already hearing examples. I don't know if I can use them, Ed, but there are examples where these types of discussions are already undertaken, again, to leverage assets, to say if the county has excess capacity in the area of technology or a building or people, that they can share it and provide those services for someone who can't. The county auditors, the county auditors have already clarified that they can be the fiduciary agent or fiscal officer if your finance officer retires. If they're not elected, the elected village fiscal officers is another issue, or the township fiscal officers. But where they're an appointed person, if they retire, turn to them. They're willing to sign the contract, provide the service for you. Regional shared service centers. The two big things I want to talk about are regional shared service centers and the local government innovation program. So assuming you still have the wherewithal and interest in listening to these two components, they are the most important things I'm going to talk about today. The first, regional shared service centers. It was mentioned today, I think, by a couple of the panelists this morning, that education service centers, everybody know what those are? They used to be the county boards of education. Once upon a time, all 88 counties had a county board of education. As school districts consolidated, and there have been waves of school district consolidation throughout our history, in the 1990s, the law was changed and said an ESC, an education service center, can't just support one school district. So if you have a countywide school district, doesn't mean need a countywide board of education anymore. So there was a wave of consolidation from 88 to 56 of those. Anybody know what an information technology center is? There are 23 of those around the state of Ohio. A Race to the Top grant, a regional shared education, eTech Ohio. There are about 8 regional support networks that have been established to support schools. The administration in schools will provide instructional support. We are integrating all of them into one entity called a regional shared service center. In many parts of the state, those ESCs or ITCs have already formed as COGs or reformed as a council of government, and in many cases are providing services directly to governments. They're either doing the pooled health care, they're doing a purchasing consortia, or they're providing back office support or staffing or running the bus system for multiple school districts. In many parts of the state, they are already partnering with local governments. I mentioned Larry Morgan is providing that health care to libraries and to some townships and some colleges. Our vision is this. When we talked to local government leaders, the township said, you know, all the townships in the state should band together. And there's some things we should do as a network. The cities, the municipal leagues said, you know, there's some things we should do statewide. And the more we looked at it, the more we looked at the data, the greatest opportunities to share services and to collaborate is at the local level. It is partnering governments, maybe things that don't look like you, as we heard earlier this morning, partners who you may not have thought of before, but they're right there. That's why we have the Intergovernmental Shared Service Authority, and our vision is that the integration of this regional support network is going to lead to a cluster, an entity larger than a county, multiple counties, that is also the home for, in the right economy of scale, for many shared service opportunities. So now again, the choices, these aren't mandates, but you can partner with a neighboring entity, you can turn to your county, or a natural place to turn is your regional shared service center. They will be in place by July of next year. Again, I want to make it perfectly clear. It is not a new entity, it is the integration of existing entities. We are in the process of developing the plan for that right now. The budget called for that. And something of special note to all of you, the legislature, and I'd say that many members of the legislature get it. Part of that study, before we can develop that plan, is an inventory. They required a shared services survey of every government entity in the state, every education service provider at every level, and every form of local government. Again, let's go back to 2744.01. I've said since March, part of our problem is the 3,700 units of local government. That's an awful lot of decision makers. It's an awful lot of ways to do things. All 3,700 units of government are expected to respond to the survey. It goes out noon tomorrow. I know because I helped write it. It is being distributed by the Department of Education directly to the schools and through the statewide associations related to every other type of government entity. The county coroners are going to send out a survey to their membership, the county commissioners, the municipal league, the township association, so on and so forth, through the list. Much to my, I don't know. On one hand, I'm delighted. On the other hand, I'm dismayed. I thought it was going to be cumbersome to deliver an online survey to 3,700 units of government. By the time, I thought there were 88 counties, so that's what I put in my count for 3,700 units of government. By the time you add in the engineers and the coroners and the sheriffs, and then we found out about the publicly funded hospitals, and of course the park districts and on, 6,021 surveys are going out. That's our population. 6,000 independent decision makers. Our request is work with anyone within your organization to fill it out when you get the link from your association. But please, just submit one response back. Because if that's 6,000, if we get incomplete surveys, or if the administrator and the elected official both decide they have differing opinions on this and we get multiple surveys back, we're going to have significant data compilation issues. I'm going to tell you what we're trying to accomplish with the survey. We're trying to get the largest inventory to date. We are picking up on the work that John Hornbeek and Kent State University did, and through this mechanism, the legislature created it. This was not an administration initiative, but it's our job to carry it out. We are going to try to get an inventory, a response from everybody, and we're trying to find out an inventory of all of the existing shared services initiatives, where the opportunities are, what type of shared service initiative would you participate in if you could? And we have 10 categories of those, and then some specific examples to help prod your thinking. So we're going to capture everything that's being done, everything we'd like to do, and then there are questions related to the barriers and obstacles, and we want specifics in that. You know, we found out in working with schools, transportation, right? Pooling together the bus garages and or the service itself is a great idea, and it makes sense to a lot of people that in an individual district level, it may not be the most efficient way to deliver the service. But when two districts tried to get together and they wanted to put the kids from District A on the buses of District B, the insurance company said, no, you can't have kids that don't belong to the school district on your bus. So we're going to look at figuring out how to fix that, either in the law or working with insurance policy, or what if a regional shared service center is the carrier, is the provider of transportation services, and the 100 school districts within that territory are all just under that contract and under that service, and they do routing and bus maintenance and everything at a multi-county level, of course coordinated back in the individual school district to make sure the kids aren't riding buses for 2 hours and that kind of thing. Doesn't that kind of make sense? You tell us the barriers, and we will work to change laws, policies, or develop programs to expedite breaking them down so that you can collaborate and shared services together. So that's the last part of the survey, is what do you want us to do? I mean, outside of these specific shared service examples and everything else, there's a general question at the end that's, all right, what do you need us to do? And we will compile that and read through it, and it's going to have a quick impact. The governor comes from Congress, and there they have a budget every year. The state runs on a biennium, but we are looking at a mid-biennial budget review. No formal announcements have been made or that exact timing or planning, but there will be a significant policy-related document and work through the legislature in the early part of next year. All of these recommendations will be done in time to have an impact there. They'll have an impact on the next biennium budget, and where the legislature, we have to report back to them. I think where there are packages of reform that are necessary to help in this area, I see legislative members I talk to frequently who are interested in creating a vehicle and sponsoring independent legislation related to breaking down some of those barriers, okay? So you tell us what you want. The link's coming tomorrow. Don't call me if it doesn't work. Call your association. The $45 million Local Government Innovation Program. It was created in this budget. The money will flow, or begin to flow, July 1st of 2012. There is a 15-member local government innovation council. The governor's appointments have been made. We're still waiting for legislative appointments. That body will meet and establish final criteria here before the end of the year. Applications will go out on the street by January, so we'll put the criteria in place. I say we because I have been designated to serve on the Local Government Innovation Council. Please don't lobby me for your project on the way out. Submit your application, and I'll remember that you were here today and how loud you applauded when I finished. That doesn't violate any ethics law. You can praise me and applaud me as much as you want. It's no violation. It's grants and loans. Part of the funding will be grants. It's also divided into tiers of larger communities and smaller communities. Okay, so there are multiple pots of funding to make sure that it all doesn't go one place. Each entity, each part of an application, there's a $100,000 cap per. However, there's a $500,000 cap per project. So if 3 or 4 or 5 entities go in together, you can expand the amount of money you can receive. A local match is required, but Dave, following up on your idea, private sector investment, private involvement. In that idea, that story from Talmadge about the bank not wanting to finance the Council of Government because it didn't exist, I've got a bank that will. How about no interest loan, repaid out of savings for the shared service initiative or the innovative project you're putting in place? In addition, we made sure the law was clear. The local match that's required can be provided from an outside source. So if you have businesses, if you have a regional chamber that wants to see government innovate in your region, they can take their money, pool it with the local government entity or the school, submit the application, and receive the money from the state. We hope that this very quickly provides a catalyst to see this movement take off and identify the best projects around the state so that we can replicate them and we can find optimum levels of service delivery and the right economies of scale. And we can make more poster children. The governor is happy to talk about more than just green. We are always looking for that next best example of the right way something's being done. In fact, Ed, I want to know the mayor of that small community in Cuyahoga County because I'll make him a hero in Cincinnati. I'm happy to do it. We would want to find those best practices, those best projects, and figure out how to make them go. I mean, I'll be honest. It's just hard work. And sometimes the first projects out of the gate didn't do it the right way. We don't want always everybody following the hardest way to do something, right? Let's do it, refine it, and then replicate that process. Because it can't all just be done by knowing what the last guy did. There are ways we got to find the best way to do it and then make sure that's the lead that everyone is following. The Ohio Department of Development is administering that program. Thea Walsh is the program coordinator. I will make sure Civic Commons and Efficient Gov Network have her specific contact information. But you can talk to me. I mean, anybody wants my contact information, I'm happy to give it to you. The governor addressed a group of fire chiefs. And at the end, he said, well, here are members of my cabinet. And he goes, oh, and we have Randy Cole, our shared services expert. What's your email address, Randy? I thought, well, that's nice, Governor, thanks. You made the presentation. I get to answer all the phone calls. But that's okay, because I do believe in this. We believe in this as an administration, and I think a political leadership in Columbus, Republican or Democrat, legislative or executive, we do believe in this. And we know the tough times, and we know that the budget itself has not made things easier. We get it. We know that. But we do believe it is a shared sacrifice in that we are trying to work through the solutions with you and want to continue to throughout our time. If I can leave you with one final thought before we get into questions. 2 weeks ago here in Akron, we had the Akron Marathon. 15,000 runners from around the world. One of the things that make the Akron Marathon so exciting is that it's different than some marathons. It's not just a 26.2-mile race. It also is a relay competition with 5-person teams running parts of that marathon. As I look out across this audience, some of you I've worked with, I just turned 44. I've been doing this for 20-some years. It's not a career yet. I still have, remember, newborn kid to put through college 20 years from now. Heaven help me. this is going to be a long race. As I look out across this room, when I hear the stories, when I hear the conversations at the tables, you guys have run the first leg of that race. No doubt about it. These are the people who get it. We now, during the 4 years or 8 years we have in office, are taking the baton from you and running with you and want to break down the barriers, create the processes for additional collaboration, make it easier for you to do it, so that when you take the baton back from us and our time in office is done, you're going to run that next leg faster and better. Hopefully that'll be the downhill portion with the wind behind your back. And that's what we want to do right now. We are partners with you on that marathon relay team. And many of us in this room will not finish some of the initiatives that we're starting. And that's okay too. As long as the processes are in place, we will get to that point that with 3 small children at home, I'm not going to worry about Ohio's economy or what's happening in our region, and that I'm going to get on an airplane to visit my grandkids. I want Ohio to be great. The governor believes that we have the capacity as education leaders and government leaders to help facilitate a transformation in Ohio that has not happened in the 200 years of its existence. So I look forward to working with you as we run that marathon together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Randy. And we have, I think, about 20 more minutes. And I want to get, you guys probably have a lot of questions, so please just jump right up to the microphones right now if you do. And as soon as I see you there, we'll get to your questions. Randy, I want to ask you about, there have been all this talk about tools, and now we know exactly what those tools are.
Some of them.
Some of them. What don't we know about?
There are other things out there. We don't need to get into all the details, but there are still other tools. We've got an inventory that's actually 15 individual items that we're communicating and compiling. And again, we'll work with Civic Commons to make sure all of those references to revised code and the programs and the contact people are available for you to work on them.
Okay. One of the things that came up earlier in the plenary panel this morning had to do with trust and building trust and making sure that you have those relationships of trust with your neighbors as you begin to collaborate on some substantive project. And one of the issues that has been really front and center in recent years and is addressed in policy at the Cuyahoga County level has to do with poaching and economic development. And it's one of those things that undermines the trust that's necessary for these kind of collaborations that we're talking about. Can you illuminate a little bit about the governor's stance on this?
I can't specifically discuss poaching. I don't know the governor's position on that. But we do believe in partnering. We follow what's happening with the JEDs as an economic development tool. The governor, again, through our Jobs Ohio initiative, are partnering with the local regions and trying to facilitate additional partnerships and relationships. We have met with the Regional Prosperity Initiative and are following those things and talking with state leaders and associations and think tanks about what they see on the revenue side of the equation or economic development.
So, okay. I mean, from a good government point of view, is it? And I mean, economic development is a very, very tough game, and states are poaching from one another all the time, trying to lure big businesses out of state, to a new state or new home. Is that something that that state government? I mean, is it in the best interest of our communities? Is it in the best interest of the state if one municipality is offering tax incentives for the big employer in the neighboring municipality to come over?
Well, I think the governor's already stated that, one, he hopes that we create the economic climate, we have an economic recovery in Ohio, and put the reforms in place that keep people from raising their tax rates. But in addition, I would say that any government, any business that can be expanded in Ohio or located into Ohio, we should pursue it and do it as long as the return on investment calculation makes sense.
Okay.
So keep it within the boundaries of the state.
Okay.
Or bring it in.
On the Government Innovation Fund, Do you have, you said that the criteria coming out and a lot of the rules and all of that, the applications will be made available. Do you have a sense of how much money a project could get in terms of is there a limit?
Yeah, the limit's $100,000 per entity, $500,000 per project. And again, the size of the project isn't limited. You could put whatever additional outside funding or local funding, partnership funding into it, but the state limitation is $100,000 per entity or $500,000 per project. That $45 million, by keeping those caps in place, again, we hope it will help facilitate as many of those projects as possible and get a good geographic representation and a good representation of types of projects throughout the state. And that's the intention behind it, is that it's a catalyst, but it's not going to fund all of those initiatives. And I think some of the dollar amounts we heard from panelists this morning were in tune, where there's a $100,000 study. You know, that gets covered in this. Where there's a piece of technology or infrastructure. You know, one of the things that came to mind very quickly in this was, you know, I got a phone call from a mayor in Northeast Ohio who said, we want to do a joint dispatch center. We know we'll all save money, but there are 5 entities involved. Only 2 of us can really afford to pay part of the $1 million upfront cost to make it happen. And I said, okay, and we thought through it, and we talked through what some of those scenarios were and getting outside financing. Again, if they get the loan, they can get it at no interest a year before they have to begin paying anything back. We'll put the part of that money up front. But that total cost of their project for all of their infrastructure needs was under $1 million. Well, if the state's willing, again, 5 entities, willing to partner and pick up half of that in the first year, whether they qualify for a grant or a loan, and you can apply for either, when that comes through, that's more than half their project cost. So, you know, we think it's at a level that can, again, provide that catalyst or overcome some of those initial investment hurdles that are slowing down some of these collaborative efforts.
Go ahead.
In line with that conversation, my concern is that there's a lot of good low-hanging fruit that we can work on, but that $100,000 match for a small community is going to be prohibitive, especially after all the cuts.
We have not determined what the local match amount is yet. So I'm saying a local match is required, but it has not been specified that that's a 50-50 or a 1-to-1 match yet.
That's what I heard from, I thought you said 50-50 when you said we'd have half the million already. If there were 5 entities.
Okay.
You don't know
No,
how
that was a specific example related to somebody saying that their project was about $1 million, and if there's a $500,000 cap on the funding, that would have provided half of it. If their project was only 120, you see what I'm saying? 125.
Well, if it's 120, you're not going to give us 60, you're going to give us the 100?
Hasn't been determined yet. But I can't speak on behalf of the rest of the Innovation Council. I'm only one appointment, and we haven't had a meeting yet.
Okay, but the important thing is that it's not definitively a 1-to-1 match.
Right.
It could be a different sort of ratio.
Right.
Go ahead.
If a number of governments applies for a loan in this program, anticipating cost savings, and the cost savings of the collaborative effort don't develop, how does that affect their payment of the loan? Has that been determined what kind of policies the state will pursue on that?
The council hasn't met yet. We don't have criteria. We don't have all of those policies in place. But that's part of the reason there's a loan program, is to help hold the feet to the fire and make sure collaborations last. You know, there were some people in this process who said, yeah, collaboration sounds good when you get the new fire building in your community. What keeps you from, you know, reneging later? Well, if you guys are all on the hook to get your payment together and there's a loan program and you've got to pay that off over the next 5 years, we think that's one of the incentives to stay together and make sure you actually get the savings done. And Commissioner Troy told me you were going to leave me alone today.
Yeah, this is going to be a very friendly question.
Okay.
You
say
had
that every
indicated
time.
you had indicated that you thought the legislature was willing partners on this. I don't think they went as far as some of the proposals. Obviously, you know, the 2% shift in PERS payments certainly would have helped offset the local government fund cuts or the tangible personal property tax losses, and they didn't do that. But you mentioned the 3,700 governments, and I'm very familiar with the fact that we have 17 separate independent elected officials in Lake County government, so it kind of expands the number of surveys you have to send out. In terms of sharing the services, and I think there are great, and those two paragraphs you indicated are in the code that are almost like a blanket authorization to share whatever service you want between whatever type of political entities are there. I think that's great, but the problem is going to be jettisoning the old structures that are still there. As I've said, to you, I know that Lake, Ashtabula, and Geauga County tomorrow would set up a regional medical forensic examination facility, or even get together and contract with Cuyahoga County's new medical examiner's office and all that. But we couldn't get rid of the existing entities that are there, the coroner's offices. And if we keep all of these, we can share all the services we want, but these governmental entities and structures, they eat tax dollars. Overhead eats these tax dollars. I mean, I guess the feeling is is the legislature going to have the will to take on some of these associations, basically pick sides and say, we just don't need to have 88 county coroners anymore. We don't need to have 88 separate county recorders anymore. This stuff can all be done electronically, but we keep this 150-year-old system, I guess, in place. And I guess you're feeling on over the next 4 or 8 years how much progress we'll make in that area.
It sounds like maybe you should run for the legislature again, Commissioner. They're calling. Okay. Term limits, new districts, all that. I'd say that we already recognize for the development of the regional shared service centers, we already said that there are independent systems, over a half dozen independent systems. We know that we have to undo some of those to create regional shared service centers. So we know that's part of the lift. We know that's part of the planning, and have been talking with legislative members about that aspect of it. In some cases, we were talking about at the table about some of these savings and things. Attrition is significantly easier to handle in your workforce than layoffs are. And I'd say the same thing when we look at some of these structures. People change. They share a superintendent when one superintendent retires, right, or a treasurer. And it's the same type of thing with administrative staff. And what we're going to have an interesting challenge in, Commissioner, is the balance between what needs to be done to facilitate local control for doing that, where you can vote and get rid of that office or that, without creating a charter county or something. But finding out those ways that somebody can do that, or putting a mechanism in place that if somebody chooses path A versus path B, that there's an automatic dissolution process. And that's what the Auditor of State's taken the lead on in the mergers process and consolidation of governments and things. There's a lot more work to do, but what I have found, the target's been on my back a number of times this year. Some insurance companies, county auditors 1 week. It all depends on what that initiative is, but it goes back to what some of these barriers and obstacles are. I'd say barriers are in the law. Obstacles are what we create, or that's where the turf battles come in and the egos come in, or the fear of change. And that's often what leads to those problems, Commissioner, and they're real. But we definitely recognize in many of these initiatives that there's an undoing process that needs to be taken into account. And I think some of the legislature is interested in carrying that. We'll see what happens when it comes to a vote, because you're right, they did step back from some of the other reform initiatives we had in this budget that we were pretty excited about.
Just to clarify, is there conversation about a county government streamlining fund? Carrot to dangle out in front of counties that might want to consolidate coroners' offices or auditors' offices or recorders' offices?
At this point, there are no incentive programs envisioned beyond the local government innovation program.
Is there conversation?
No.
Okay.
Hi, Randy. Don Barzak with the Trumbull County Engineers Department. This question is somewhat in reference to cooperation that we provide with a lot of our local townships and entities in the county. I'm going to use Mr. Hovanek from Champion Township, your former township, as an example.
Dear to my heart.
Mr. Hovanek comes to me and asks me, he wants to cold mix pave 1 mile on Durst Drive. I can do that for $58,000 or they're about $58,000. Can't do it. Force account limits don't allow for that to happen. And I know force account limits have been a fight for a long, long time. But if you truly want government to actually be more efficient and more effective for the public, we need to look at force account limits. If I can come out and use government forces to do a project less expensive than what a contractor can, there's a problem. If you want us to be efficient, you've got to give us the tools, put the tools in the back in the toolbox, and let us go out there and do those projects for those communities. Trumbull County has 24 townships. If everybody decided to do 2 miles of road and cold mix pave 2 miles of road, you'd be saving $1 million. The last bid that we looked at that come in from a contractor was $20,000 more expensive than what we could do it with county forces.
Well, again, we are looking for optimum levels of service delivery and choices. And I'd say that the survey that's coming out tomorrow, which will come out to the Trumbull County Engineer through the County Engineers Association, make sure in that barrier or obstacle box you put that information in as a barrier. And then in the last question where it says, what specific things could we do? Say, visit force account limits, and that's fine. That's the only time I've ever given anybody advice on filling out that survey. It's probably going to come back to get me because I'm going to get 88 responses from county engineers that say, change the force account limits.
He's already sending out the email.
Yeah. That's why we didn't release the survey early.
Another question.
Does anybody in the back have a question? No, you're all in the back.
That's why they
how you
sit in
sneak
the
in the
back.
bathroom, right?
One of the things we've talked about is putting together a how-to manual on collaboration. And so I would encourage you for the entities that receive these grants to require of them some kind of case study analysis. What were the problems they were looking at? What were the problems that came up? How did they address them? What problems weren't they able to address? So that sitting up in northeastern Ohio, I can say, gee, we're thinking about doing something. Well, Dayton did something, and here's the problems they incurred, so that we can grow upward in terms of our knowledge base. And so I'd encourage you to require that of the recipients, some kind of case study or how-to manual.
That's great. That's a great suggestion. I'll take that back.
I know the people who can do that for you have already done it. John Hornbeek and Kevin O'Brien, I think they can help. So you don't have to replicate something. So I know it's...
We're always happy to leverage and borrow.
Okay. Any other questions out here? We're talking about a wide range of things, from shared services, buying paper clips together, to mergers and consolidations, which really you didn't talk about very much, but I know is part of the conversation because it's an underlying part of all of the conversations. We have 88 counties because when the counties were formed, everybody needed to be within a day's ride of the county seat. And I can get to Cincinnati in a day, so we could be one county at this point. But you talked about 3,700 local, governmental units. Does the governor want to see this audience having the big, scary conversations about mergers?
There are already, because of the budgetary changes in some of these entities, like even within the ESCs and some other, we're already seeing, Summit County is a great example. We're already seeing some level of consolidation or merger happening within functions of government, the health departments getting together, the building departments getting together. But actual political subdivisions and political entities, it's a much tougher thing. And I'd say that there's an awful lot of local control and identity that goes with what's happening, and most of what we're pushing here, what we're helping to facilitate, are the collaborations, the shared service initiatives that people don't notice happening. They still keep the car going down the street, painted the way they like, with the logo they recognize. There's a great example of that in western Summit County, where the community of Norton voted 2-1 against partnering and getting policing services from the county sheriff. Now again, we've already got a model in the same county showing how it works in the city of Greene, but they voted 2-1 against it. I believe, Helen, within a year, they were part of a 5-community joint dispatch. Because 2 for now, to expand. But, because dispatchers is, as we've heard, something that, because of technology investments and the way you can run the systems, is something that's easier to merge or consolidate. I'd put it together this way. If there just was now speaking on behalf of the governor has publicly said he would like to see a bipartisan commission study what the benefits of consolidation and mergers would be, what those optimum levels might be and to put some thought into it, but nothing has moved forward with that. Those were just some public comments he made during the budget process. We have no current initiatives to do anything like that. And if I can draw the analogy, shotgun marriages today will not yield the same results that a courtship between some of these previously unwilling partners, where you guys pick your own dance partners and you work on projects together. That will yield more savings, more benefit, and better quality services to the taxpayers. And that's what we need to have happen. So you guys figure out how you want to do that, who you want to do it with. That will work. If there were large mandates right now that just said this is how many of different things there are going to be, or political entities that are on the chopping block, I think we'd have a dissatisfied public, and or that effort just wouldn't go forward. Politically, it would get stopped. We'll see.
You also mentioned the mid-biennium review. What exactly are you going to be looking at, and do you think you'll actually have enough information at that point?
I don't know. The governor and budget director, Tim Keene, have both talked about, contemplated a mid-biennium budget review, a policy and fiscal document the first half of next year that evaluates the current economic condition and new policies we found. Nothing specific has gone into it yet. I've only seen a couple memos saying that there's a timeline. If it's going to be done, it should be done in time for July 1st of next year, the next fiscal year, the second year of the biennium. And nothing else has happened yet. I do know Director Keene wants to talk to statewide associations, local government associations, and start that discussion and dialogue about what will go into it. But there's nothing in place yet. Again, I hope some of what we find in the Shared Services Survey works its way into that work, if that's what happens in the spring.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the one message you want to make sure this group hears is fill out the survey and do it tomorrow. Don't wait until Monday. And then, of course, stay tuned for more information and use the network, use the Civic Commons, and use your email address.
Right. They do have 2 weeks to fill it out. It'll come out tomorrow from all the government associations. You have till October 28th to complete the survey. We need it done because our plans and recommendations by law have to be completed by December 31st. So I'd like the data in October so we can analyze it in November and write in December, and I can enjoy my children during the holidays.
Good luck with that.
Thanks.
Well, while we give Randy a round of applause, Bethia Burke will come up and tell us what's next.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Randy. We really appreciate you coming down and sharing this information. We hope that everybody continues to ask questions about what's going on at the state level to help move our local government collaborations forward. We just really want to thank everyone for coming today here and for doing all the work that you do every day to help make local government more efficient and effective. We are really excited to have so many people here interested in this topic, and we hope you will continue to engage with the Efficient Gov Network both in person. Our next meeting is the 10th of November in Richfield, and you are all welcome, and online at theciviccommons.com/EGN. We are not coming back again to this room after our next breakouts, just so you know that this is the last time we will all be together at once. The afternoon breakouts start in about 15 minutes. You have a 15-minute break after this session. Go back downstairs. There'll be new signs up to tell you where to go for the next 4 sessions. We have health insurance, economic development, joint fire, and mergers going on this afternoon. After which we hope that you will continue to engage with each other and sign up to be a member of the Efficient GovNet. So thanks very much and have a good afternoon.